Before we start, just close your eyes for a quick second. My job is just to speak from the heart today, bring out your passion. We both love recruiting. A recruiter changed my life. I've been in this industry for a decade now. After this call, I'd love for you to just maybe go shout out a recruiter who's made a difference in your life. Hit up a recruiter that, reached out to you, that maybe changed your life the way it changed mine. Life is short. A little bit of gratitude goes a long way.
Love it. Put me in my feels.
Today on the show is Stephanie Holman. She is a recruiter and creator who's built one of the most trusted voices in the cleared defense and national security hiring space inside complex government and tech environments.
I'm recruiting engineers that are cleared. They have clearances to work on projects that are highly sensitive, that require more confidentiality. So it's hard to talk about this space, can really land you in hot water.
About demystifying hiring in one of the most opaque corners of recruiting. Why does cleared spaces get this kind of opaque corner or unknown when it comes to just the work you do?
We make it easy and safe for the military to update software, right? In a highly secure, disconnected environment.
Hey, RecOps friends, are you still losing hours every week to interview scheduling chaos? What if you could eliminate the back and forth, cut scheduling time by 90%, and actually get those recruiter hours back on the hiring desk where they belong? That's exactly why teams are turning to Rooster, the native interview scheduling platform built inside Workday Recruiting that finally makes interview logistics fast, seamless, and predictable. With Rooster, you connect directly to your Workday system. No extra tools, no disconnected workflows, and instantly let candidates self-schedule with one-click booking links. It handles time zone and language differences automatically, sends branded confirmations and reminders via SMS, email, or WhatsApp, and keeps interviewers, coordinators, and candidates in sync without constant manual follow-ups. And it's not just about speed. Rooster helps you see the true cost of scheduling inefficiencies with its TAS metric, so ops teams can track and improve the parts of the process that slow you down the most. Whether your team hires locally, globally, or somewhere in between, Rooster cuts errors, saves 10 plus recruiter hours per week, and creates a candidate experience that reflects the quality of your brand. If you're ready to stop chasing calendars and start hiring with confidence, visit rooster.us and schedule a demo today. Your recruiters will thank you. Now, on with the show. All right, what's up, everybody? Today on the show is Stephanie Holman. She is a recruiter and creator who's built one of the most trusted voices in the cleared defense and national security hiring space, with a background spanning education, military service, and recruiting inside complex government and tech environments. Stephanie is known for turning clear human content into real outcomes for security cleared talent. Her work centers on transparency, access, and demystifying hiring in one of the most opaque corners of recruiting. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here, Brandon. I am so excited to talk to you and hopefully answer some questions for people that are interested to hear more about the space.
Yeah, 100%. I'm excited for this chat as well. I usually start with where are you based and what are you working on? But in the pre-show, you shared you're coming out to Colorado soon. So I'm pretty stoked that you are going to be a new neighbor with this amazing recruiting community that we have in Denver and in the Front Range. But where are you right now and what are you doing?
Yeah, so right now I am in Tucson, Arizona, which is very different from Colorado. And I'm looking forward to seasons. Like you said, I'm a cleared space recruiter. So what that means for someone who might be listening and has no idea, I recruit for Intel Defense National Security. I've had a history of recruiting for government contracting companies. They're in this space. And right now I'm working with defense unicorns. For anyone that's watching, the unicorn behind me, that's Doug. He's our mascot. We can talk about him as well. But just a super quick plug for defense unicorns. What we do, I'm going to try to explain this pretty simplistically. There's a lot more to it, but we make it easy and safe for the military to deliver update software, right? In a highly secure, disconnected environment. So what the heck does that mean? It means we're getting software to warfighters when they need it, where they need it, and we're getting them what they need. So really cool stuff that gets me jazzed up every day.
Yeah, I love your passion. It really comes out in who you are online. I think the environment we live in today, the world of work, it's more important than ever to have a strong personal brand. And you've got a great brand. Defense Unicorns has a great brand. So congrats on your new job. What gets you out of bed each day to be a recruiter?
I've been on the other side many times as a job seeker. And I've had good experiences and not great experiences, right? I think when it comes to someone, they're looking for their next opportunity, you can really change that person's life, or you can give them breadcrumbs to find the next opportunity if something doesn't work out. And I just want to be a good person, good advocate, and help folks out there because once upon a time I was there and there's a lot of people that helped me out along the way. So hopefully I can keep sharing information that just steers people a little bit better on their journey.
Yeah, I love that piece. And I mentioned it in the intro, like about demystifying hiring and one of the most opaque corners of recruiting. Why does Cleared Spaces get this kind of opaque corner or unknown when it comes to just the work you do and what it takes to hire?
Yeah, it has to be. So, being in cleared recruiting, what the heck does that mean? So, what that means is I'm recruiting engineers that are cleared. They have clearances to work on projects that are highly sensitive, that require more confidentiality. So, it's hard to talk about this space, especially on social media or even verbally to someone because there's a lot of do's and don'ts. I know I've got a LinkedIn presence. I've worked very hard for that, but saying the wrong thing, especially on social media, can really land you in hot water. So I always tell folks like, connect with your manager, your marketing teams, find out what you can and can't say about this space. I try to share as much as I can, get right up to the line to again educate future individuals that want to get a clearance and want to come into the space and just don't know how. And then also connect with people that are currently in the cleared space and looking for their next opportunity. It is so incredibly tricky. For anyone that knows my social media presence, that took 4 years to get to that space and a lot of trial and error. I had to suck for a really long time. So what you're is the result of all of that.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the 10-year overnight success. And when I think of other creators who are really just recruiters doing the job of recruiting online marketing positions, it's funny to think of ourselves as creators at this point because I got my first job in recruiting doing recruiting coordination and employer brand work. I was a millennial who knew how to use Facebook, and they handed over like the keys to a LinkedIn account, the intro to the recruitment marketing agency, the Facebook login, and like we built a brand. And like for the last 10 years, I've been doing this, running brand pages. And now it's really fun because I get to hang out on the space, on the house that recruiters built. Like that is the LinkedIn news feed. It didn't always have a news feed. What has your creator journey been like? How do you think about the content you're putting out there for people?
Boy, again, I have tripped through it since day one, but I will say I had the nerve to try, right? So my journey as a creator, I got my start in tech recruiting with Amazon Web Services. Really cool experience, AWS. And I noticed there were recruiters out there that had pretty large accounts, right? And I'll just be honest, prior to starting my own account and tinkering around with it, I just thought these people operate on a different level, right? We've all met the Brad Pitts of the world. They're good looking, they're great actors. They talk, some people just have it. And that's real, that exists. But when you're looking at these accounts, and again, I have started to think more like an engineer. It is engineered to a certain point. There's a framework, right? And so I started reading more about marketing and at a very simplistic level. How do you set your account up? You start with who you are, what you do, and you share a little bit about how you do it, right? So when someone comes to my page, they know, okay, Stephanie Holman, she's in cleared recruiting. She works for Defense Unicorns and she talks about cleared stuff. It sounds really simple, but when I was just starting out, I was thinking about me, right? And that's not the wrong thing to do, but I was thinking about what do I want to share, right? What stories do I want to put out? And I quickly found out that it's not about me, right? It's about your audience and the value that you bring. And if you listen to that audience, you're brave enough and you can take some of the feedback. It will guide you. It will guide your content. And then you'll start figuring out, oh, okay, what is it that people want to know? What can I share? How can I help you? So I know that's extremely simplistic. Again, it took 4 years of just tripping through it, refining. And now when I put content, I honestly don't think about it. You go to the gym, and the first time I went in a gym, I was like, oh God, I don't want these people to look at me. I'm going to look dumb. What am I picking up right now? What am I doing with my arms? But you go enough, and then you're like, oh, okay, I know this equipment. I actually can run and sing at the same time. You just got to exercise your creativity.
Yeah, I love it. And I like the idea of recruiting being a creative act. We talk about the art and science of recruiting. And I think we're moving in a direction where candidates look for the human connection in a hiring process. And oftentimes companies say they hire based on data, but candidates often make decisions based on gut. And we're in this time where we need to be creative about how we reach candidates, the stories we tell, and the information that we're providing to them so that they can make a really great decision about their next career move. Because the reality is the workplace is more volatile than ever. I don't know. The reality is like the workplace is more volatile and people have had multiple jobs. They've gone through layoff experiences and recruiters are some of the most empathetic people I know. So when we have that clear messaging and we know how to talk about certain subjects and earn trust with candidates, there's no better way than having a strong personal brand because let's be honest, LinkedIn is having a moment. And one of the first things people are doing when they get an in-mail or they get an email from a recruiter is go look them up on LinkedIn to see if they're legit. How do you think about candidate trust?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with social media that I find just wildly interesting, I have a lot of folks that reach out, and usually the first thing that they say is, I feel like I know you, right? Because they've seen me, they know my tone, what kind of information I put out there. And that plays into trust, right? Can I trust this person to give me accurate accurate information related to my experience that could potentially impact your world in a lot of different ways. Changing jobs is extremely stressful, so stressful. It impacts you financially. It impacts your immediate relationships, your spouse, your kids, your drop-off time. So yeah, that's serious. You want to make sure that when you're talking with a recruiter, they're not just selling you a bunch of bull, that they're really giving you an accurate picture of what it looks like walking into that organization. It's funny, I just switched companies from MetroStar to Defense Unicorns, and someone I was connected with, she sent me a message last night saying, hey, I just got an offer from your last company. I just wanted to double check. Did you leave for any adverse reasons or is there anything I should be aware of? And I was so glad she reached out and I'm like, no, it was an amazing company to work for. You are going to have a hell of a ride there. Great people, good manager. And so then she responded with, thank God. That is just helpful to hear because it's a big step. It's a huge step changing jobs. Let's not minimize that.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm with you. I think that one of the best things we can do for our personal brand is to leave graciously, not talk poorly about our previous employers despite layoffs. I know a lot of recruiters have gone through layoffs. That will do more for your career, particularly when it comes to references and back channels and having folks in your corner. Recruiting is a thankless job. There's a lot of ways to make a living. Just be a bright spot, be grateful, and be humble. Because at the end of the day, like we're recruiting, we play a vital role in the business, but let's be honest, we're here to get to a handshake. Yes, I love the grit, the resourcefulness. I embrace the scapegoating when recruiters are the first to blame. I like being the black sheep in corporate America. Maybe I'm just the oddball out, but what's your take on the role of recruiting as it evolves?
Gosh, it's going to keep evolving in so many ways. Obviously, we're touching a lot on social media. I think we're going to see more companies interested, right, in recruiters having that organic marketing and reach because people want to hear from actual people. And I always say with a candidate, regardless if they make it or not, I hope that they've had a good experience with me. They've had a good experience with the company. So if they don't cross the finish line, they're like, I didn't make it, but I was treated with respect. This person is a human being. They're a walking, talking advertisement. Like I know I sound a little jazzed up, but that beats out any marketing, any commercial, that you can imagine because of the hundreds of people that they'll come in contact with. I think that's been super surprising to me as well in my journey that I've had so many candidates who didn't make it, right? The majority don't. It depends on the position, how many applicants are coming in. But even from candidates who didn't make it, they've sent referrals because again, they were treated with respect like a human being. Yeah, I I always just say if you can deliver a good experience overall, people remember that.
Oh, 100%. And I love this idea of hospitality. I have a hospitality background. We can extend internal hospitality with our hiring managers. One of the best compliments I've ever received was a hiring manager who slacked me after a kickoff call and was like, "Whoa, that was really fun." It's yeah, recruiting, like our meetings should be fun. We're talking about getting people hired. Like this is the dessert when it comes to the work we get to do. Like we get to make these amazing experiences for folks, and we should be focusing on that. I think recruiters are moving towards a direction of becoming more storytellers and marketers. And we're going to see a resurgence of the employer brand, recruitment marketing. Recruiters are required to do a heavy amount of outbound and have really strong messaging and be personable, connect with humans. But when I think about the brand experience, it's about how we make people feel about us. And recruitment marketing is the specific activities to drive a conversion moment in a funnel. And when I think about that funnel, I'm excited about AI because AI is going to give us AI is going to give us like a more drilled down interview to hire ratio. So we may spend less time with candidates per rec than historically because we're able to get better signal through noise. So when we create those great experiences, I'm actually thinking we'll have more recruiters talking about referrals, more recruiters talking about the value of employer brand, more companies wanting to hire people like you who can deliver these amazing hospitality experiences because you can automate the rejections in a wonderful way that allows candidates to feel respected. That is something we've solved for. What we can't solve for is understanding the human nuance. And if you're able to connect on a very deep level with 5 candidates for an engineering role, I actually think that's more valuable than if you had maybe 10 or 15 surface level screening conversations with those same candidates in that same rec, because you're able to deliver that hospitality and you may drive referrals from the 4 folks that don't get the role. But if we go into the process knowing like we're going to have a 90 to 95% pass through rate with the hiring manager with those 5 folks, that puts us in a great position to have silver medalists in the ATS, to have a backup candidate if we have a less than 100% offer acceptance rate, to have that second quarter or that next quarter hiring headcount candidate teed up, ready to go. I'm on my soapbox today. That's a lot of information, but all that's to say, I'm excited about the future. How are you thinking about the future?
I am too. I'm excited. One of the things I see AI really helping with is being a time saver. And there's a lot of different directions we could go with that in this conversation. But to your point, if we can have 5 reach outs versus 10, I just kept hearing as you were talking, respect for someone else's time, respect for my time, respect for the hiring manager's time, right? I realize as a recruiter, when I'm reaching out to someone, they're going to feel a whole lot of things. Usually the first thing is hope. They're optimistic. And I always just want to be really careful with that and not reach out to too many people because typically there's only one position, right? 1 or 2 seats. And so I think if we can use AI in a way to get more streamlined, to not reach out to too many, but a smaller number, that's where it's going to get better, right? I never want to give someone false hope, especially with the number of applicants that we're seeing.
Oh, 100%. And I think part of the sentiment I'm seeing when I log in online every day, there's actually a lot of negative worker sentiment despite having relatively low unemployment. And this is an inversion. And I think it's because people are craving more connection. We went through the pandemic, then we went through layoffs. And I think ultimately folks are looking for a connection to community, connection to their work, a connection to their purpose. I don't know if work needs to provide that for people. I would actually argue it's a concern if work is that sole source of purpose. But we need to have empathy for that and just simply recognize what people have gone through and be that beacon. So when I think about folks looking for jobs, it's important for people to understand like the difference between an applicant and a candidate. Yeah, you could have 2,000 applicants, but there may only be 2 to 5% candidates in that pool. Yet you log online and you think, oh, no one's getting a job. No one's getting a job. It's like, no, somebody is still getting a job because it's always been 1 rec to 1 hire.
It can be really tough, especially on highly competitive roles that, like, let's say remote roles. I've seen a lot of applicants come in on remote roles, regardless of the company that I've supported, yeah, there's a little bit of a disadvantage just from an applicant standpoint. That said, and I know on LinkedIn, you can go and view how many applicants have applied for a job. That doesn't mean all are. So it's a tricky balance sometimes when we're seeing a lot of applicants come in.
100%. You mentioned you got like a crazy amount of inbound applications in just a couple of hours on a rec recently. Tell us that story.
I did. Yeah. I had just opened a new position. I'm not going to say the one, but I just opened a new position, and within maybe an hour and a half, there were 200 applicants on it. And I have to put this out there because there's so much misinformation out there on ATSs, right? I am the one, me, Stephanie, that is looking at those resumes and rejecting them. Now, sometimes different ATSs have different capabilities. So if I have a role, for example, that requires a certain level of clearance or a hard requirement of 5 years of experience, right? I can go in and I can set what's called knockout questions. So if someone answers that question and it's no, I don't have whatever it is that I'm asking for, then yes, I can set an auto rejection on that role, and then they would receive a rejection email. And I think that kind of confuses folks out there because they get that and they think, wait, I didn't even get a look. How could you possibly have reviewed my resume within 24 hours? Sometimes I have set those, sometimes I haven't. It depends on the position, right? Because if it is truly a hard requirement, I have to adhere to that requirement. There's very real reasons why recruiters have to sometimes adhere to those requirements. And yeah, I just think there's a lot of misinformation out there on, is somebody looking at your resume? Is it a computer system? Who's actually rejecting you? Most likely, it's actually a recruiter that's looking at your resume and clicking that button. And it doesn't feel good, by the way. I know when I click that rejection button, that person's going to get an email. I have no idea what's going on in their world when they're receiving that. They could be having a not so great day. I think about it every single time. But I also think about the flip side. People just want to know where they stand. There's a lot of folks that apply to positions and they never hear back. And so they're just like, can you just tell me? So it's tough. It's always tough to press that button.
What's your advice for recruiters in that automation? If they're getting 2,000 applications a rec and there's 1,999 rejections sent, how do you think recruiters can bring more humanity to that process?
Yeah, I would. So if you see a really large number of applications in a short period of time, I would go back to the job description. Is there something that could be clarified a little bit more? That's a number one thing I would look at. And then it comes down to bandwidth. I think it's a good thing to have an open line of communication with your manager, your team, to say, hey, here is the data, right? What I'm seeing, and here's what I'm actually capable of during the day. And here's the impact, right? Because the candidate experience or applicant experience starts way before you ever interact with me, right? Starts with the maybe company website, the job description, the application experience. I'm not going to name drop, but there's one ATS I think folks see and they're like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not uploading my resume and entering all my information again. So they're like, I'm out. And so I think there's a lot of pieces where recruiters can advocate for you as an applicant, right? Someone I've never interacted with, to say, hey, here's the implications, right? I'm getting a lot of applicants on this. And I'm one person. I'm trying to work through this as much as I can, but what I'm seeing is maybe a delay in notification. So there's so many conversations that happen behind the scenes that job seekers probably don't even think about, right? That are happening on all this stuff. Really good question.
I love that you mentioned the systems because we have to rely on the systems. I think we're actually headed to a golden age of recruiting technology, and I'm excited for what the future brings. And my rallying cry, I think, for recruiters is to have this message to candidates where we can tell them to not take themselves out of the game. Yeah, technology is moving quickly. Enterprise software doesn't move at the speed of consumer technology. So when we see a bunch of folks like pile on a meme of their dissatisfaction with a legacy enterprise software system that processes a lot of applications, are you doing it for the likes? Are you doing it for the bandwagoning? But the real sentiment and reply should be, don't take yourself out of the game. You have the tools and resources at your fingertips to go through that process, do more research. Maybe that is a company that is worth going through a few extra hoops.
Mhm.
Recognize that historically, companies hire candidates that are willing to go through the process that the company defines. It is not necessarily a two-way street because at the other end of the working arrangement is one person working for a company. Yes, the company is privileged and should take care of their employees, but the relationship is not one-to-one, two-way. Like the employee works for the company. That's the whole point. We need to treat candidates with respect. And I think as recruiters, we can help steer candidates to not take themselves out of the game. So when we see things like that one ATS that candidates hate, the person who got the job, they did it and they didn't think it was that big a deal. If you
Right.
think that's a big deal, what's going to happen when there's conflict or challenge or adversity or like a slow technology in the job itself? Number one, don't take yourself out of the game when it comes to the tools that recruiters use. Don't take yourself out of the game around cover letters. The cover letter has evolved. A cover letter file upload can be literally anything. All a cover letter is the opportunity to showcase your skills and your unique value proposition. So when I see content like, oh, we hate cover letters. It's like you hate talking about yourself. You just took yourself out of the game. Take home assessments. I think a lot of companies are relying on take home assessments. These are fantastic opportunities to demonstrate why you are a better candidate than the other 4 or 5 folks that may have also received that take home assessment. So doing a little bit of work up front to get the outcome, which is a job to be a W-2 employee at a company that writes a paycheck for you and manages the payroll expenses and costs of employment and gives you health insurance. Let's be honest here. It is a privilege to have a job. I think anybody who works 40 hours a week should be able to afford a home. And there are a lot of societal things at play. But my diatribe here is as recruiters, let's tell folks to not take themselves out of the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's two go backs that you're just firing me up. The hamster is like fully running on the wheel right now. I want to expand on, what don't take yourself out of the game means for me. Yes, there are going to be hoops of fire when you're applying to positions that you might have to jump through, right? And the thing is that if you don't, there's somebody else. There's always somebody else that is willing to write that cover letter or go the extra step. Keep that in mind. However, I know it's hard not to take rejections personal. Trust me, I've gotten them in the past. And I'm like, what the heck? I'm Stephanie. How could you not love me? But it happens. And you just don't know as an applicant or a candidate that's been through the interview process why you were rejected. There's a lot of different reasons why you might have been rejected. Also, to that point, just because you get rejected does not mean you are dead to that company. Prior to getting into Amazon Web Services, I got rejected. I lost count. I think I had applied to Amazon 15 times, rejection. And then I found my door in. What was interesting when I jumped into Amazon and saw the recruiter side, I saw how many applicants applied for those positions. So that was like an aha moment. It might have not been super personal to me. It's just that I was up against hundreds of other qualified folks that were also applying. Please, if you get a rejection, again, you are not necessarily dead to that company. Apply again. I've worked with many candidates who didn't make it on the first try. They didn't make it in on the second try. They didn't make it in on the third. They made it in on the 4th and 5th try. And they just kept going for it, taking feedback. If I could give certain feedback and just refining a little bit and then applying again. It happens to more people than you think. So yeah, don't close the door on yourself. The other thing I want to touch on really quickly, and I might get some pushback on this. Social media is a wild thing, right? There's a lot of good and bad there. I would say watch your social footprint. What I mean by that is you are probably less likely to be engaged with if you're someone that's trashing recruiters. And I get it. There's bad recruiters out there. There's bad characters in every industry across the board. But ask yourself with these social media platforms, what does that say about you professionally? I cannot prevent someone from looking at your profile. I have seen hiring managers in the past look and go, this is problematic. And it was usually a tale of extremes. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Folks can take that kind of for what they want. It's really tricky.
That's great advice for recruiters who are out of work. I know a lot of recruiters are looking for roles and yeah, it's like The internet is always watching. And I think for recruiters, one of our super skills is to be optimists. And that can be challenging when we're out of work. But yeah, my advice for everything you just said is for those recruiters out of work that are looking for their next role, that are posting content, don't pile on the bandwagon of negativity. Focus on the positive. Like that is our role in this world of work, is to be the bright spot. I want to dive deep really quickly on one of the areas of recruiting that I'm curious about in cleared spaces, and it's scheduling. So, when you're outreaching candidates that have clearances, they're often in facilities that look different from like a tech startup, a co working space. These folks don't have their personal phones on them. They're not like jumping out to the parking lot to take a call. How do you think about getting in touch with your candidates that you're outreaching? And how do you think about scheduling with them?
Yeah. So, in my experience, I've recruited for senior level engineers that are typically working in SCIF environments, right? Where like their phone goes into a locker type of situation. So, with those individuals, I can't reach them during the day. So, that means I'm either reaching them early in the morning or late in the evening. I think some of the smartest companies, when it comes to recruiting, they allow flexibility, right? With that, reach people when they're available. I've gotten so much kudos for phone calls, which is odd. Or maybe it's not. I don't know. But I've gotten a lot of thank yous from engineers just saying, hey, thanks for calling and not sending an email, which has been surprising. I think a lot of recruiting it can be email heavy. So again, that phone call is a personal touch. They're hearing my tone, the company I support. I obviously keep it short, or even just leaving a voicemail. I've gotten just a lot of positive feedback on that little piece. But yeah, sometimes in cleared recruiting, your schedule can be a little all over the place. When I first started, I thought, I need to sound a certain way. I need to look a certain way. And that can come off very scripted. And so you have to remember, regardless of the position that someone is currently in or you're reaching out to them on, they're still a real person. Like they're still a real person. So I've gotten calls before on the weekends, right? Or someone said, hey, can I reach you after hours? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I might have my 7-year-old. You might hear him chirping in the background, or I might be at a soccer game. Is that okay? Is that okay with you? And the majority are like, yeah, absolutely, whatever. And we roll through the phone call. So that's just part of that human element. I don't think it has to be this overly scripted, anxiety provoking call.
You said something that I want to dive deeper on. They're a real person on the other end. Sometimes we're seeing a lot of fraud. We're seeing a lot of candidate fraud, big F fraud, little f fraud. What are you seeing with candidate fraud and bad actors in the cleared spaces area?
Yes, I've seen this with every company that I've supported, and even in and outside of the cleared space, to be honest, but just bad actors. So what does that mean? It's someone who is not who they say they are. They might not be in the United States. They might be using an alias. The training that we do, the cybersecurity training that we do, it's so critically important. Having been a military veteran and or in the military, now a veteran, and like you're forced to do this training, and people, if you've been through that training, like there are times when you're like, click, just let me get through this training. And I get that. But if you're paying attention, I'm not going to mention anything specific, but we're seeing more stories of these security threats, these bad actors. And so those trainings become more and more important because everyone in your organization could be targeted, right? So we are all the gatekeepers, especially recruiters, when we're reaching out. I always say if something seems off, it might be. That pink flag could turn into a huge red flag, especially in the cleared space. Don't just go, that was weird, and drive on. Do not do that. Tell someone, your recruiter, your recruiting team, your manager, your FSO in security, tell someone, because it could be something not so great. So security is all of our responsibility.
Well, I can't think of more mission-driven work that you're doing right now, Stephanie, than on the front lines of national defense and dealing with national security in that way. Thank you for your military service as well. It's been a real treat having you on the show today. I'd love to have you back on.
I would love to be back on. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and this platform to just share a little bit more about what I do, and then also just my love for recruiting and people. I want you, if you're listening, keep going. Sometimes we don't know where our story is going to take us. Just keep going, one small step per day. It'll work out.
Well, Stephanie, I'll see you when you get to Colorado.
Sounds good.